And welcome back again to Back Garden Bushcraft. Today we wandered slightly further than our back garden because we're going to have a look at making some natural cordage. And to make natural cordage we've had to go out and collect some nettles. So I've got a few nettles here that I've picked already. And the first thing to do with these to prepare them is to remove the leaves and the majority of the stings. So by gripping at the top of the stem and pulling downwards, you'll remove most of the stings, and you can just pinch off the top bit. You can save the tips if you want, make your nettle tea to cook up as a vegetable, quite high in vitamin C. So what we're going to do is just finish collecting a few more of these, and then we're going to take them back to the garden and we'll start processing them down to make into cordage. So we're back in the garden now. I have a nice bunch of nettle stems that I've stripped off all the leaves and taken off most of the stings. By running them down, you've broken them down so they're less likely to sting you. So what we're going to do next is to break these stems down into fibres. And the first thing we do with that is to use a round piece of stick. This is one of the toggles that we made the other week, and by laying this down onto a flat surface you can then push down to just crack through the stems and just roll all the way along, breaking it down as we go. The toughest bits are these little leaf nodes. Now, to split this further, we need to then separate it. Now, there's two ways of doing this. One, if you don't bite your nails, you can use your thumbnail, which you just run up to break it open. However, you can end up with some of the loose stings under your thumbnail, which can be a bit unpleasant, or we can make ourselves a little tool. So I have a short piece of stick here, and all I'm going to do is just to carefully make down a little wedge. This will just allow me to use the end and slide it almost like a blunt knife. So using the little tapered wedge, you just find the gap, enter it in, and then you can just push. It's when you get to these nodes you have to be a little bit careful because you don't want to snap the stem, and we just gradually work our way along these. If you come out, just find your way back in, and then we're just opening up the fibres all the way along. Now, you may get more than one split, that doesn't matter because we're going to break this down into several strands of fibres as we go. So once we're there, we then ease this out flat. Again, you can then use your thumb and that will just encourage it to open up, and then you end up with a flat piece of nettle. We then need to release the outer bit, which is where the tough fibres are, from the inner soft pith. So by folding it outwards we create a snap, and then you can peel the inner pith carefully away. Just by running it through your fingers, do this very gently because you're trying to get nice long fibres. The longer the fibres, the easier it's going to be to make the cord. And there'll be a point where it just becomes so weak that you can't do anything with it. So we're now at this point. All we want to do is to then separate these down further. So again, you're just encouraging it to separate along the existing splits. There'll be a point where you might actually find it's easier to do without the gloves and just to suffer a few little stings. You'll just tidy up because you want a nice, reasonably neat fibre to work with. So there's 2 pieces. We just keep going with this, breaking down into smaller and smaller fibres. Doesn't matter about the length will vary. And then we can use this, because as you're making the cord, you don't want all your fibres the same length, because when you start to weave it, you don't want all the joins in one place. So what I'm going to continue doing is to break all of this down, and then we'll come back and have a look at the next step. So we're back again now, and yesterday I finished splitting down all the fibres out of the nettle stems. We ended up with a nice big bunch of separate fibres. We left them overnight to dry, which just makes them a little bit easier to handle and toughens them up a bit. You can do this, either leave them in a garage overnight, which I've done, or you can dry them in the smoke over a fire, which actually toughens them up really well. So to make the cordage, this is the next step, we're going to twist some of these fibres together to make a nice long cord. So from the bunch I've pulled out here about 5 or 6 fibres. You don't need all the ends to be levelled up, and it's actually better if they're not, because you can add in the fibres as you go. You don't want all the ends level, because this will result in a very weak cord. You need the ends all to be at different levels to give a nice strong join. So we're going to start about 1/3 of the way along, and we start by twisting the fibres together, and we'll just gradually work along until we have a nice twisted piece of the cord. And what I'm going to do is to allow this to gradually fold, and by twisting and continuing to twist, the cord will start to wrap on itself. So we need to keep twisting each side, and it's normally easier to twist each side individually. You have to keep twisting the same way, and as you twist, gradually the cord will wind on itself. And you can see now that I'm starting to get towards the end, and some of the fibres are coming up short. So what I do is, from the bunch, just pick out another 1 or 2 fibres as required, and then you lay them into the bit where they're starting to run out and start wrapping again. What we're trying to do you end up with quite a neat, you'll always end up with a few little bits sticking out as we go. And you can pin down on a surface to hold it. And then I'm just encouraging it to twist a little as we go along. Again, we're starting to run out of fibres, so I'll pinch another few fibres off of the bundle. This time I will level the ends up a little bit because we want to add in several at one spot. And what we can do, even though you've got a few ends sticking out, those ends will either eventually disappear into the knotted cord, or some of these loose bits out here, we can just trim them off when we're finished. This side is starting to thin out a little bit now, so I'm just going to take another one or two just to add into the bundle. And what you want to do, you'll notice that often the fibres are thicker at one end than the other. So what we do there is, normally if you've got thin ends, you will match them against a thicker end of fibre, so you try to keep the thickness of your fibre constant all the way along. As you can see, in a relatively short amount of time, we are starting to build up quite a nice length of fibre. So what I'm going to do is to carry on with this, keep adding more and more fibres, and then we'll come back to this in a little bit and show you what I managed to create. So I've now twisted up the cords, and what I'm doing is just going along and trimming off any loose ends. I'm using my penknife here because it's a hand, but for the scouts out there, you can just use a small pair of scissors just to trim off the loose ends. The end where we finished, I've just put an overhand knot in the end just to stop it from unravelling again, and that will be absolutely fine. Doesn't go anywhere. So this makes a relatively strong cord. If we want to increase the strength, what we need to do is to increase the numbers of fibres within the cord. So we have two options. If I had 3 of these, I could plait them together, or you literally take them again and twist, and you can then double up the number of fibres to make a thicker cord, which increases the strength yet again. So that makes a nice strong cord for either lashing pieces of wood together or any of your other needs if you don't have your usual paracord or anything else with you. It takes a little bit of time to make the 2 cords that I have here, which are both about 1.5 to 2 meters long. It's taken me about 45 minutes. With practice, it will get better, and our prehistoric ancestors who were using cord like this probably all the time would have been doing this of an evening in between, you know, hunting, gathering, eating, building fires. So they had this continual supply of this cord. So that's the end of our natural cordage session, and I'll be back again sometime soon with another episode of Back Garden Bushcraft.